The polls have begun to close in Venezuela for an election that could end authoritarian President Nicolas Maduro's long hold on power. Mr Maduro has ruled the country since the death of Socialist strongman Hugo Chavez in 2013. And there's been mixed messages from the leader. He's pledged to respect the results of the election, which opinion polls suggest he will lose, but has also warned there will be bloodshed if he's defeated. Mr Maduro's challenger is Edmundo Gonzalez, a centrist former diplomat who has the backing of a coalition of opposition parties and has agreed not to pursue criminal charges against members of the Maduro regime if he wins. Dr. Raul Sanchez Uribarri from La Trobe University has conducted extensive research on Venezuelan politics, and he joins us now. Mr. Uribarri, this is said to be the most consequential election in a generation for Venezuela. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the opportunity. At the moment, as we speak, I'm following the Venezuelan elections 15,000 kilometers afar, and I can tell you, I couldn't sleep last night, and it's very hard to keep one's mettle right now. It's a very exciting and at the same time quite concerning process.
Would you say this is an election that is hard to predict the outcome on?
I believe the outcome itself in terms of the voting has happened. Everything points to a solid victory of the opposition at the polls. Different accounts from anecdotal accounts to the exit polls that we count on suggest that the opposition candidate has actually won the election. Now, the problem will be, A, will the National Electoral Authority announce that result? And B, will the government will actually be willing to acknowledge defeat? As a result, we are in very tense moments at the time, anticipating the final result.
Was it a free and fair vote? And what was voter turnout like for this?
The election itself is not actually free and fair. Unfortunately, there are multiple irregularities. I'll give you an example. There are about almost 8 million Venezuelans living overseas. Mm-hmm. Due to multiple barriers to exercise one's right to vote in the overseas, only 1% of that population was actually enrolled to vote. And I can tell you for sure, because I went to vote yesterday. To exercise my vote, I had to go all the way to Canberra. No postal vote. And this is just one out of many irregularities. But on the other hand, what we see at the polls is anyway the count of those who actually went to vote, who braved and tried to overcome all those barriers. And of course, for the candidate of the opposition and the movement of the opposition movement itself, it's been a stunning campaign from the moment that the candidate Maria Corina Machado was elected in primaries last year. She wasn't allowed to run, so an alternate candidate was selected for the opposition. That's current candidate Edmundo, and he is the one who ended up facing Maduro. So it's been, unfortunately, not a free and fair election, but the question will be whether the will of the people expressed at the polls will still be able to overcome that fact.
And can you give us the context here, the economic situation in Venezuela and state of democracy there?
Unfortunately, if you look at any count, any serious count on democracy of the past 25 years, you will see a declining line. All the way from failed democracy, a flawed democracy that we used to have for about 40, 50 years, to an authoritarian regime as we have now. And this happened as a result of a death of 1,000 cuts, so to speak, over the course of 20, 25 years, in a very complex, complicated story. Unfortunately, in the past few years, that decline devolved into an increasingly repressive authoritarian regime. And this was coupled with a complex humanitarian emergency, a complex economic emergency. Just to give you an idea, in the past 8 to 10 years, Venezuela has lost close to 75% of its economy. And this is staggering. At some point, inflation in Venezuela was 1,000,000%. We're talking about a complete catastrophe in what, until relatively recently, was a middle-income economy.
Will Maduro accept the result if he loses?
It is a great question that I keep asking myself at the moment. I would like to be more optimistic, but on the other hand, I trust that this is the best shot there's been for a transition, perhaps in years, not to say in those 25 years. So the chance for recovering democracy is still there. When we study democratic transitions, we know that it's never easy. But we have to be prepared for any scenario, and I wouldn't rule out Maduro trying to cling to power no matter what.
And what is riding on this result for Venezuela, but also the South American region here?
Two things, I would say, not only the South American region, but for the world as a whole. Venezuela was one of the first countries that fell in the trap of populist authoritarianism and polarization. Many of the phenomena that we see nowadays globally that are undermining democracy happen in Venezuela. And this was one of the cases that actually became one of the key cases of democratic deterioration, not only in South America, but globally. So a lot is in the right for Venezuela, the ability to be a democracy again after 25 years, and for the region to welcome Venezuela again as a democratic nation. After all, Latin America is a region of democracies with many problems, but it's continued to be largely democratic since the last authoritarian regimes of the late 1980s.